Welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. I interview incredible people who've dedicated their lives to helping those who've been impacted by trauma. A big thank you to our sponsors and our guests who are supporting this show. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Ruth Wilkey. Ruth, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Guy.
You are welcome. Ruth is the author of Sociable Bunny, a children's book and character-based brand that focuses on helping kids develop emotional health, friendship skills, kindness, trust, and positive character traits through stories, activities, songs, and animated-style bunny characters. Ruth says the idea emerged during a healing journey after depression and unresolved childhood trauma while attending a writing school in Hawaii. She describes the Sociable Bunny as an expression of bringing light and love to the hearts of children. My God, don't we need that in today's culture and world and everything going on? Ruth, great to have you here. Before we get going, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I'm originally from northern Michigan, a little town, a resort town called Petoskey. It was called the Gem of the North by our governor. It's a really beautiful little town on a bay called Little Traverse Bay in Lake Michigan. And I now live near Palm Springs, California in the winter. So right now I am out in the desert and it's about 105 degrees right now here.
Nice. All right. Let's dive in. How did all this start for you?
Well, as you said in my introduction, it started with me kind of hitting bottom. I had a lot of, I didn't realize the depth of a trauma that I had experienced when I was somewhere between 7 and 10. And it involved something with my dad and my brother, and my cat ended up being killed in front of my eyes. And I did not know how to process this, and that I just kind of shut down, and that whole thing got locked inside of me. And I felt like I couldn't trust myself with love because my brother had said, Ruth, I need you to call your cat. And I called my cat, and my dad was around the corner and he shot it in front of me as it came running to me. So it had been causing problems that I didn't know how to deal with. And he was a farmer and he just said, okay, it's time to get rid of the cat. But as a young child, this was my pet.
How old were you again?
Somewhere between 7 and 10.
Oh my.
And so I did not realize until much later when I went through my healing journey that as a child, when these things get trapped in our hearts and we don't know how to process them, we can make a blanket, like a bitter root judgment. And I decided, okay, this involved my brother and my dad, so therefore the male species cannot be trusted. I followed it with an unholy vow. Therefore, I will never trust a man. So every time I was in a relationship and it looked like it might be heading toward commitment, I would freak and sabotage, and that would be the end of it. I would do something, that would make him run away. And I always felt like I was the victim, and these guys, they just can't be trusted. But really, I was living out this unprocessed trauma in my heart.
Let me interject here, if I may. So my guess is you didn't recognize this when you were growing up. I mean, you didn't realize how this was impacting your relationships, when you were younger.
Totally.
This became known at a later date.
Right.
Excuse me. When did you realize, be able to look back and say, oh, this is what's been going
40
on?
years
How did
later, I was like
30?
40.
40.
I was 48, and I had been sabotaging every relationship or just afraid to get close to someone, not knowing how to build a relationship because I couldn't really trust. So I got to the point where after the last breakup, I was like Okay, so I'm a Christian, so I was like, God, please just take me home. I can't do this anymore. Um, Either that or we have to somehow just start over again. And really, I just wanted to die. The last time I remember I was in the bathtub thinking I could just slide under and end it all, and I would never have to go through this again.
Mm.
And that's when I realized, okay, this is serious. I'm in trouble here. And I happened to let it slip to somebody in the family who said, you have got to go to a doctor and get on antidepressants. And the doctor said, I can put you on this, but I don't think you should be on this for life. I think this is something you can figure out how to resolve. And so I just started praying that God would somehow show me what does that mean? I've been going through this for life. I'm always having anxiety. I'm always on the verge of depression. Um, this is the first time it had gotten that serious, though, that I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And always felt insecure. So, as I started praying about it, a girlfriend said, Ruth, I'm going to Hawaii to this author training school. I know that Bodhi Taney is your favorite living author, and she's going to be teaching the workshop for 3 months.
Wow.
And I'd like you to go with me. Well, at the time, I was a full time piano teacher just going into the fall quarter. My students had paid for the whole quarter, we're on track. I'm like, this is impossible. And I have a home and I have animals and a business. And she said, well, let's pray for a miracle. Well, within 2 weeks, I had found out teachers to replace all my students. There was a missionary coming back from Africa whose kids really wanted to experience dogs and they wanted to house sit, dog sit for me. And friends at church and in the family said, we'll pay for your school for 3 months. And all of a sudden, boom, everything's taken care of. I'm on my way to Hawaii. And it was
Wow.
uh, it was a Christian university called University of the Nations. And so actually I was there for 9 months. The No, 6 months. The first 3 months is called a discipleship training school. And in that we were learning to hear the voice of God. And one of the exercises was write on the top of your paper, God, what do you think of me? And what are your plans for my life? And so don't edit, just write what comes into your heart. Well, Jesus started talking to me about hot air ballooning and how he's the pilot that checks for the dangers and the direction we're going and all of this. And I'm like, I love Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, and I love the lion Aslan. And he said, I'm Aslan, and you're like Lucy, the one who gets to ride on my back and watch the wonders unfold and watch me set the captives free and those who are hurting and bring them back to life. And I'm like, wow. So, as my friends, I shared this with them, and they said, you're not gonna write your father's story, which I thought I was gonna write. You're a children's book writer. And I said, no, I'm not. And yeah, you're a children's book writer and you're gonna write your own story. And I'm not writing my story. I don't even want to be here or living anymore. I don't have a good story to write. So the first day we were supposed to start writing our books, my roommate brought me breakfast in bed and said, good morning, Sociable Bunny. And this whole series just flashed in front of my eyes. I thought, okay, I'm going to real quick write this down. Well, it turned into the project I wrote in the next 3 months. I
Wow.
got the award for co-creating with God because I did something totally I never knew I was going to happen. And it was the story of me getting this, bee stings in my heart by being bullied in school and things that would happen in my bunny burrow. And the lion took me on an adventure and taught me about my identity and my purpose and how to understand others who are not kind and maybe haven't learned yet how to best use the skills and talents they've been given. Because somebody who's a leader, if they don't know how to use that, can become a bully. You
Hmm.
know, somebody who is very good at getting along with others can also side with the bully and turn against you because they're influenced by others. So, I learned about the power of influence. And my roommate was very good at helping people come out of crisis. She was a therapist, and she would tell me, Ruth, you're collapsing inside. You're leaning against the wall. Stand up straight. You stand up. You have a
Hmm.
voice. And so I was learning so many things through the process of writing and being in this school. And it's like I had a little intimate experience. It might be what therapists go through with EMDR. I'm not a therapist, I'm a educator. But it was like I something happened and I just collapsed onto the floor and went into this place inside, and it's like Jesus guided me through being able to forgive, understand why I didn't trust men, took me back to that memory with the cat. He had me dance with each of the people involved and forgive them and let them float away like hot air balloons. And then up until this point when I would talk to Jesus, he was always the lion because I didn't have any walls in my heart against the lion, Aslan. But
Hmm.
in this little experience in my heart, it's like he said, now you can look at me. And he was no longer the lion. He was the most joyful. Like when I was in Hawaii, I was meeting islanders and they have this like joy about them and a
Hmm.
joy de vie kind of thing. And that's what he was like. He was just so joyful and laughing and fun. And he just transformed my heart. And that's the story that's what came out with the lion taking the bunny on an adventure and learning identity and purpose and being able to stand up and have a voice and own my own self.
So you, from what you're saying, sounds like you had this incredible, almost religious healing. Prior to that, Ruth, you'd mentioned you saw a doctor. The doctor was like, I don't think you need to be on these meds for life. Was there a time where you did seek out a quote unquote traditional therapist?
I had, yes, gone to a therapist. And I
And
had,
why did you go to the therapist? What was your reasoning at that time?
I think I was struggling with depression.
Okay. And how old were you at that time?
That was maybe 5 years before that.
Okay. Was at that point, was there any indication that there was a thread to that traumatic? Okay.
No.
No. All right.
No,
So
we
did you
hadn't
go
looked
see?
at traumas really. And
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
feel like I was really making progress. I'm trying to remember where the therapist came in, or if I had possibly just started with the therapist after I got on the medication, but then suddenly left because it was a short period of time. I only had a few sessions. I'm thinking maybe that's what happened,
Hmm.
you know? And then once I got to this place and I was introduced to something called healing prayer or theophostics. And there was a therapist who had been dealing with a lot of women who had gone through trauma. And he was religious and he cried out to God, I don't seem to be helping people. Why? And the Lord revealed to him that we can have these pockets of pain that just get locked inside of us, and it's hard to know where this really started. And so the first person that did a healing prayer with me said, you could spend many, many hours with a therapist, but when God reveals where this started and takes you back to a specific memory, and then you start exploring what happened, you can kind of like unpack that and let the stuff come out and just talk it out. And it's almost like watching a movie, you know. She said, like, um, you might hear a voice, you might smell something, you know. And I heard my little
Mhm.
3-year-old voice for the first thing I went back to. And I said something in my little 3-year-old voice, which shot me back to a memory that happened when I was about that age. And it was the first time I got like a bee sting in my heart that I didn't know how to process. And that got
Mhm.
locked away. And somebody had mocked me. So every time I felt like a mockery thing, it would just feel huger and huger and huger. And I would just shut
Mhm.
down, and I couldn't process things, you know.
Mhm.
Um, or a rejection. You know, another time was a
Yeah.
rejection, and then it gets locked away, and every time that's touched, it feels bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
became a highly sensitive person and just very insecure, so easily hurt, so easily sliding into depression, anxiety.
Let's talk about the Sociable Bunny.
Okay.
So you're at this what sounds like an incredible writing experience in Hawaii.
Hmm.
Your your friend, who also sounds amazing, comes in, says,
Good morning, Sociable Bunny.
good morning, Sociable Bunny. What did you want to do or say with this book?
Well, at first I was just unpacking my situation. I'd go for walks, and each day I'd get a new chapter, and it was just so surprising. And by the
Mhm.
end, I was able to come back and not be a victim, but realize I could be a leader. And when I got back to Michigan after this school, people saw such transformation in me that they were inviting me to be speaker at different events and to
Wow.
share my story. And then I realized this has power to help other people being able to process things. And
What has power?
the story of
So
learning how to unpack your trauma and go on an adventure. And well, for me, it's with God, but I also ended up after this marrying someone who is an alcoholic. And because of that, I got into Al-Anon. And some people, you know, it's God as you understand him, you know.
Mhm.
But so in the book that I wrote, it starts with the storybook, which is just the story of the little bunny getting bee stings. Like 3 different things happened. And she had heard from her papa that there was a lion who sometimes took his, you know, her papa on an adventure and took her mama on an adventure. And she says, will he ever take me on an adventure? And he said, well, if you get to the point you really need it and you cry out to him, he might come and take you on an adventure. And that's what happened. So when the third thing happened that was very, very traumatic for her, she cried out and he came and took her on an adventure up into the mountain. And well, they went to the bunny burrow and got mama, and so they went on an adventure together. So because you don't want like a inappropriate kind of thing happening. So anyway, and she learns her identity and her purpose and how to understand her friends. And she comes back, and next time something happens, she's able to turn it around and become the leader to take them on a fun adventure instead of collapsing and going into depression.
Mhm.
She's she,
So, and just to be clear, this is a kid's book.
it's just a kid's book.
Okay.
And it's
Ages
being
what?
tested right now in second grade. Well, it's not, it was tested last year and they loved it so much. It's kind of in goes between picture books and chapter books. It's a chapter
Okay.
book that has beautiful illustrations. And at the
Okay.
end of each chapter, there's a place where Fluffy wonders about your world. And there's always two questions and a challenge that takes her experience and says, have you ever felt like Fluffy? Have you ever gotten a bee sting in your heart or thought that you were different and maybe something's wrong with you? You know?
Right, right. Now, just
And
to be clear for our audience, is this you mentioned your religion? Is this an overtly religious book?
it is not.
No. Okay.
It is,
Okay.
I read it after I first wrote it in a second grade classroom in Hawaii. The teacher happened to be Christian, and so anybody who knows Jesus recognizes the lion. Then she said, let's test it at another classroom, if the teacher would, who was very anti religious. She was an atheist, and she was hostile towards Christianity. He said, see, let's see what happens if you read it in that classroom. Well, there was one little boy who recognized the lion, and he's like, and he looks at the teacher, and it just went right over her head because she doesn't know Jesus, so she didn't recognize it. It's just a lion and a
Sure.
bunny.
Sure.
Or it could be, for any faith that has a hero mentor.
Of course, it's symbolic.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. Now, you'd mentioned on that journey, the bunny learns their identity and their purpose. Say more about that.
So I happened to be very tall for my age, and I was teased about it, and I was called an Amazon, and I have big teeth, and I had to wear ugly saddle shoes, and because of my appearance, I got a lot of bad comments. I was bigger than all the other kids and stuff. Well, so Jesus said, you're tall for a reason because you're stately and you carry something strong. And it's like he gave me a scepter to pray blessings over people, you know, and to help. And and people have commented on that I have a smile that can light up their hearts. And so even if I have a big teeth, they're blessed by my smile. And um, that I have blue eyes because I like to look up at the sky and imagine what heaven might be like. I mean,
Hmm.
where he took things and turned them around and made them into something beautiful and positive that I can appreciate myself.
Hmm.
So that's part of my identity, and my purpose is to bring light and love to others, and that's what I am trying to do through the story.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's so many, especially for kids, right? There's so many potential roadblocks, especially about how we look,
Yeah.
whether we have big teeth or what, or a big nose or whatever it is. But I think to be able to have an opportunity to reframe that and look at it from a different angle, where you're able to appreciate it is very powerful.
It was for me, and it was transformational. It's almost like I was recreated on the inside, and that's why when I came back to my home church, one of the couples noticed such a change in me. They said, we need to go to this school. And he was a physician, a very well known, good
So,
doctor. And he went to the school and came back and decided to be a pastor.
you must have been on fire when you got back from that writing workshop. I mean, what the heck was going on there? What happened?
I was,
Did you go there? You said, I'm sorry, did you say you went there, you, you were like rock bottom type thing, and you were just so open, like you were just ready?
I was. And when I learned to listen to the voice of Jesus, and I would write each day, and he would tell me the most surprising, positive things that, I'd ask a question at this level and he'd answer at a much deeper level that just gave me new life. And then going through a couple of these experiences of going back into memories, getting rid of the pain, just pouring it out. And then one of the things in the exercise was look for Jesus. My eyes were closed and I would see him and he would pick me up and tell me something. And whatever he told me just gave me new life. And one of the memories was very powerful because this roommate who was a therapist, I'd be brushing my teeth and she'd say, "Can I pray for you?" And she would pray against the spirit of witchcraft. I'm like, I was raised in a Christian family. I have no idea where witchcraft came in. Well, one of the memories shot me back and I became my great grandmother in Europe. Giving birth, she had an illegitimate child and was really persecuted for it. She was made to work out in the fields right up to the end. She gave birth. The story is out in the field by herself. And she had such trauma, and maybe she turned to witchcraft for help. I don't know. I have no idea. But when I shot back into her memory, I had such compassion and love and heart for her. And whoever was like guiding me through this said, you have to cut off yourself from her memory. And I'm like, I can't. I felt like she was a rubber band and was just going to shoot back into oblivion. I had to hand her gently over to Jesus. And that's when that whatever that was released to me. I actually felt her ear infection. I was doubled over like I was in labor. I mean, I was
Wow.
like having her physical memories, and it was just horrific. And when I
Prior,
handed her
Ruth,
over,
pr- prior to this workshop, I mean, you said you were listening to Jesus differently. How were you experiencing your religion prior to this workshop?
I loved God, but because of my trauma, I had a wall. Jesus is a man, God is a father.
Mm,
And until that was healed, I wasn't really that, I was still guarded. Even though I
hmm.
believed it here, but I was still protecting my heart. And so I wasn't open. I didn't know how to hear his voice. And when she had us do that exercise, write a question and just listen, oh my gosh, his voice is so gentle and funny and surprising. And I love all those things, And it wasn't like a religion of your sin and you deserve punishment. And, he was taking me on an adventure. And like we were building a love relationship and trust and excitement. And I came back, I don't know if I was on fire, if I was just so lighthearted and happy. And I felt like I was on vacation, like I've been on vacation in my heart ever since, because the anxiety is gone, the depression is
Mm,
gone, the
oh,
insecurity is gone. And so in my soul, I'm on vacation because all of that heaviness is gone. And even when I work,
that's
it's fun. It's an adventure because, okay, Lord, what are you going to show me today? What are we going to write about today?
that is incredible. I mean, it's very inspiring. So, um, for our listeners here, as we kind of wind down, the book is for kids. Obviously, the book potentially could be for what?
Well,
Therapists who are working with kids?
yes, and I've had
Okay.
the teacher using it. There's a hero mentor handbook for parents, grandparents, teachers. It could be therapists.
Okay.
And there are 18 chapters. And also, just to know for the kids, there's an activity book. And in
Okay.
it, each chapter pulls out one paragraph and then it gives the concept for that. Like this one is bonzo and like no stings. Bonzo can just shoot these words that are hurtful, and so the kids are learning that you don't want to give stings. And then there's a little the activity here is write a little note to Fluffy, telling her whatever, why you did this thing, or if you feel bad about
Hmm.
doing it. And then the maze, he finds his way to her house to give her the little letter. And then
Right,
in
right.
the bubble are the questions to talk about with your hero mentor. Um, what's going on in your own heart? Have you
Okay.
stung
Awesome.
somebody or have you been stung? And how did you feel about that? Where do you think that came from? It can go anywhere. So in the second grade classroom, they're having such deep conversations. She said she can't believe this, how deep second graders can go
Hmm.
about what's happening in their lives. And it's changing how they're treating each other. Um, One of the kids told me that they noticed they're more resilient than maybe this is somebody who's been through it a couple years ago. And she said
Hmm.
she noticed she's more resilient and confident than her peers. Another one of the little girls that went through it just received the principal's award for top character in her class. Another little boy told me after he went through the program, he said, I'm a very happy boy because I went through this. Had I not met the sociable bunny, I would not be happy because he said, I'm very unique and I've gotten a lot of bullying. But now I know that it's important to be unique. I know where to go for comfort. I understand why my friends might not know how to be kind yet, you know? And
Well, there you go. There's your testimonials
and
right
then
there.
there's a little boy in second grade. You're not going to believe this one, guy, but a year ago, I think he was adopted, if I remember the story right, and might have some attachment disorder. But he was already at 7 years old threatening to kill his parents in their sleep. He would come up to the teacher, kick her so hard she'd have like a, baseball size lump on her leg, and he started going through this. Teacher is older and she's very good at knowing how to calm him down and embrace him and love him. And by the end of the year, she had me come in and talk to meet the kids. And each of them wrote who was their favorite character, why, and what did they learn about themselves. And he said his favorite character was Mama because she's kind and helpful. He learned about himself, he's not kind. And the
Mm.
life lesson is that it's important to be kind. And he thought with God's help and his parents, maybe he could do better. So over the summer, the teacher recommended they go through it again with the Hero Mentor Handbook. The dad started taking him on adventures. And he came back to school. The other teachers noticed the change in him, and he was held back a year. So he's gone through it now for the third time as
Uh-huh.
one of the leaders in the classroom, helping the other
Wow.
kids. And
Wow.
his mom came to the teacher last month and said, I cannot thank you and the author enough because I was living with a monster and now I
Oh.
have a little boy in the house.
Oh my God.
So
All right, Ruth. We got to close out here. What's the best way for people to learn more about you and the book?
they can learn about the book on sociablebunny.com. That's um,
Okay.
sociablebunny.com.
Okay.
And if they have more questions for me personally, my name is Ruth Wilkey, ruth.wilkey@gmail.com.
Okay. We'll have all that linked up here at the show notes page at the podcast, traumatherapistpodcast.com. Ruth, thank you for being here and sharing your story, which really incredible, and what you're doing for
I
kids
had
is
no idea I was going to be sharing so intimately that personal journey,
that's what this is about,
and
Ruth.
I wish
That's what this is
I
about.
wish this for everybody. And if anybody wants to ask Jesus how he feels about them and what are his plans and purposes for your life, you never know what kind of adventure he might take you on. I was very surprised.
All right. Great meeting you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Guy.
All
Have a
right. Take
wonderful
care.
day. Bye-bye.